trip, which included a visit to Williamsburg. The place had been, of course, several times, but never in the fall. This was a school trip. Another school trip. I was asked this time to chaperone a student council group that was going to a convention in Roanoke, Virginia. And along the way, we made this stop in Williamsburg. At this time of year in October, there wasn't a whole lot, weren't a whole lot of folks there. Quite a contrast to the crowded times that I'd been there earlier in the summer. And really, really beautiful with the fall colors. It was quite a treat, of course, for our students from southern Florida who had very little or no experience with fall foliage. Going on in the bus, this was a bus trip, of course, a long bus trip over into the Shenandoah Valley, going to Roanoke, through the beautiful countryside. And this was before the days when you traveled on interstates everywhere. So it was really country highway. Well, there's an interstate. And along the way, we stopped at Natural Bridge. Natural Bridge is a tourist attraction in the Shenandoah Valley, and it's a natural rock formation. Formed by a stream. A beautiful spot, especially at this time of year. On the way back to Florida, we stopped at Appomattox Courthouse, the scene, of course, of the Lee's surrender to Grant at the end of the Civil War. It was a wonderful time to be there. Here's a painting that hangs there of the surrender. This is a commercial slide. These commercial slides have turned color, as they seem to tend to do. There's a commercial slide of the McLean farmhouse where the surrender was signed. One of the things they have there is a diorama portraying the area as it looked at the time there at the end of the Civil War. There, I believe that's the farmhouse itself there on the left. And here's how it appeared the day we were there. This is one of my own slides, of course. And the surrounding buildings there in the little community. As you can see, again, there was no other visitors at all except us. The rangers were just delighted to have someone to show around. Beginning in fall of 1966, I was head media specialist at Miami-Killian Senior High School. Opened as a new state-of-the-art school. And the following summer, in 1967, I went to South Carolina, the University of South Carolina. This is the dormitory I stayed in, to attend an NDEA workshop in school library media services. And this was the beginning of a very momentous summer. Summer which not only made a lot of new acquaintances and also renewed some old ones. And the summer when I met Connie. And these were all, of course, scenes of the group having classes. This was a visit to a school. And this was the group that I spent so much time with. There were 6 of us here who were from out of state. The gentleman in the back is actually from North Carolina. His name is Jesse. And then there was myself there on the right, and the 4 ladies, and Connie on the left. Next to her, Edna, who was, I believe, from somewhere in the upper Midwest. And next to her, Sister Jean Margaret from St. Louis, who has been our good friend for so many years ever since. And next to her, in the dark blue habit, Sister Mary from Detroit, who's a much older lady who's been dead now for some years. And the 6 of us, well, except for Jessie, myself and the 5 ladies were there on the weekends, and so we spent a lot of time together. And I took the 4 of them lots of places around the state of South Carolina. Here we are at Myrtle Beach on one of our weekend outings. We went to see the ocean was quite a treat for those from the Midwest. The beach at Myrtle Beach. And then we went the other direction. We went up into the Blue Ridge for a look at the mountains. And there was, as you can see, was a typical mountain day, I think. And this looks like the parking lot of the Mount Mitchell Overlook. The highlight of the trip was probably a trip that the 2 sisters and Connie and I went to Charleston on the 4th of July with Jessie as a tour guide. And it was the first time any of us had been to Charleston. And here we are. Here is a group down at the Battery looking at the houses. The 2 sisters in their habits were quite a sensation in that part of the world. People were not really used to them. They had a wonderful time. There's Sister Mary. And there's Sister Jean. And Connie sitting there on the sidewalk, and there's my Buick Grand Sport parked at the curb. Sister Jean and Jessie. This is in the Battery Park. And Jessie took us all around to the parks. And around the city. With all of its sort of unique Charleston architecture. The houses with the side galleries. Rainbow Row. And the narrow little streets of the city. And even in some of the little shops and business districts, there's my car again, parked behind the station wagon. And our ladies over there on the sidewalk. I don't really know what this building is. I remember seeing it the last time we were in Charleston. It may be the Opera House. I think it may be. Of course, the churches that are such a prominent part of the Charleston cityscape. This is from inside, I believe, from inside the Catholic Church. There's the inside, and there's looking at the inside of the Catholic Church. And this Sister Jean Margaret, one of our tours, visiting school. Sister Jean, of course, in St. Louis, has been a close family friend of Connie's and mine and the children ever since that summer. Leaving Charleston or leaving Columbia at the end of the session. Made trips several places. Went to Washington, D.C., renewed some old acquaintances. My good friend Gene Reese, of course, from Miami, was visiting there with his sister, Sarah, there on the left, and on the right, my old friend from Miami, Nancy Jean Darling, who was teaching school there. And I went on and picked up Ron Bell, and we went to another World's Fair. This is the Expo 67 in Montreal. Now, that big globe there is not exactly a unisphere. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. One of the features at Expo 67 was that they were trying to project life of the future. This is a wonderful apartment complex called Habitat. Actually, it's sort of a city in its own. You can drive your cars right inside. It has streets inside of it, and it's modular construction. You see all of the different units there. It was quite an attraction, and really was being shown as probably the prototype for the way people would live in an urban environment in the future. I found it quite attractive at the time. The fair had the usual assortment of fanciful buildings and beautiful flowers and different kinds of vistas. There's a view of the Habitat from a bridge crossing the St. Lawrence River. There's a monorail ran around inside the fairgrounds. This was on the internal transportation. There also were water taxis. You can see both of them in this picture. The one form of transportation that we really enjoyed was the hovercraft. It was one way to get from the fairground site, which was actually on an island, over to the mainland, to Montreal. There's the hovercraft, which we did ride on. Enjoyed it very much. Here's some of the buildings. This is one of the Oriental countries, evidently, in the foreground. A view of the fair from one of the higher vantage points. Another Oriental country. Pretty obvious what this one was. Very stark. This is the Soviet Pavilion, Soviet Union's pavilion. Quite a large and elaborate one, with the hammer and sickle out front. And these are scenes inside the Soviet Pavilion. One of the striking things about this fair was that the interiors of these buildings, the architecture was all quite fanciful. These are some scenes inside some of the other buildings. I don't remember what they are. Look at all the different levels and all the different displays in this one. And this is the United States Pavilion. Very prominent on the skyline of the fair, a geodesic dome. At that time, geodesic domes were really the in thing. And so then the U.S. Pavilion is this giant geodesic dome, which is actually transparent glass, so you could see into it. And these are some scenes taken from inside it, looking out. And the monorail ran right through the side of the building. The space exhibit, the NASA exhibit, was very prominent, very important inside the U.S. Pavilion. that time, you know, we had not yet gone to the moon. Leaving there, Ron and I went upstream to Niagara Falls. And while at Niagara Falls, we did several tourist-type things, including a trip on the Maid of the Mists, the boat which goes right into the base of the falls. And these are some scenes taken from the Maid of the Mists. You really can't take pictures or even see much when you get close to the falls, simply because the amount of the spray. But they do look different from below than they do from above. One of the other things that we did, this is from taken on the deck. You see everybody had to wear a slicker, a poncho. One of the other things we did was to go into the Cave of the Winds trip, which actually takes you up under the falls on foot. And again, you have to wear ponchos, and you still get thoroughly wet anyway. But the view here is, the view of the falls is, of course, well, I guess you'd say overwhelming. The noise and the spray and the water. Leaving there, I left, put Ronnie back on a plane, Ron Bell back on a plane to Miami, and I went on by myself. I stopped in Metter again to visit with my good friend Ted Perry and his wife Carolyn and their little girl Melissa in Chagrin Falls. Leaving there, I went back east again, probably the most important part of the trip, to Sag Harbor, my first visit to Sag Harbor. Here's the main street. There's the village from the bridge, the village in the cove. But of course, I didn't go to see the town. I went to see Connie, and we had a wonderful couple of days together. This is the house on Main Street where the Scavonis lived at that time. The house, of course, is still there, although it looks quite different now. There's the main street in front of the house. The Whaling Museum on the left, the fence. You can't see it. She took me to all the local places. We went to Montauk to see the lighthouse and the ocean. This is Shelter Island Ferry. The ferry boats to Shelter Island near Joe and Vicky's house. We went across to Shelter Island. This is a scene on Shelter Island. Scenery around the harbor, around the coves, and around Shelter Island. A beautiful place. And as I said, we had a wonderful few days there. Leaving Sag Harbor, though, eventually, I went on back south to North Carolina, where Tom and Barbara were staying at Tom's parents' summer home in Spruce Pine. And here's Tom and Barbara with his dad's Jeep and young Tommy sitting on the hood. We went out into the woods that day to look at waterfalls. They wanted me to see the waterfall. And we had a real fine time out in the woods, and there's yours truly. Notice the hat. I believe that is probably the same hat that I got out west in 1965. And there's Barbara and Tommy and Tom. And Tom again under the waterfall. This, I believe, is a rock quarry nearby. Tom and I had a good time that day out, just him and me in the Jeep, going around off the road. And so my summer ended there in the mountains of North Carolina, sort of where it had begun earlier. And but it was over at last, and I went back home to Miami and my folks and my job.